Hi, I'm Troy Williams, the Executive Director of Equality Utah. We are the state's premier advocacy organization for LGBTQ Utahns and their families. Thank you for joining us for this historic event. 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, we would never have seen a moment when Republican candidates vying to become governor would join a forum hosted by Equality Utah. But the world is changing, and in red states, Utah is leading the way. So tomorrow is Harvey Milk's 90th birthday. Harvey knew that the most powerful way to create change was to come out and be visible. He famously said that if we are to live in harmony, we have to build bridges from community to community. And that is what tonight is all about. Building bridges and finding common ground. Now we know that historically we have clashed with the Republican Party. But tonight, we want to see how we can continue to make progress. We live in a hyper-polarized moment. But despite our political differences, here in Utah, we are at the table working through complex issues together. Last year, we were part of a large coalition to pass an LGBTQ inclusive hate crimes law. And this year, we worked together to ban conversion therapy for minors. So, what will our future look like with a new governor? Tonight, we're speaking one-on-one with GOP candidates Spencer Cox, John Huntsman, Greg Hughes, and Thomas Wright. And they're competing to win the nomination in the June 30th primary. Now, next Thursday, we'll continue this forum by speaking with Democratic nominee Chris Peterson. Now, we hope that you're all registered to vote. If not, go to vote.utah.gov by June 19th. And as a reminder, due to party rules, anyone and everyone can vote in the Democratic primary, but only registered Republicans can vote in the GOP primary. So we are located here in the beautiful and sanitized Fat Fish Media Studio, and we're following all of the CDC's social distance protocols. So now, thank you for tuning in. Let's start our conversation. He grew up in Fairview, part of a sixth-generation farming family. He served as city councilman, mayor, county commissioner, and state representative. He is Utah's 8th serving lieutenant governor and still lives in Fairview with his wife Abby and 4 children. And we've all seen him tear up his bass in his rockin' cover band. Lieutenant Governor Cox, welcome to the Equality Forum.
Thank you, Troy. It's great to be with you. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. So you have a dad band, but it has no name.
It has many names.
It has many names?
Yes, it has many names.
But you haven't settled on one.
Well, we go back and forth. Like any good band, you have to change your name every few years, right? I mean, any good band, not great band.
Right. This is why straight people need gay people in their lives to help creatively with these things.
It's true.
Right, so let's talk after.
We can do that.
We can help you out. Okay, excellent. All right, so everybody is on a journey. Very few people are static in their beliefs and their views. And so I'm curious about your personal journey thinking about LGBT issues. Talk about your evolution.
Yeah, so I've shared some of this publicly. This piece maybe not as much. A real important inflection point for me came actually when I was running for office. It was 7 years ago to get elected to the House of Representatives. So 8 years ago, I guess. And a friend of mine who was a reporter, actually, I come in from a rural place, a small place, came up to me and we had a very important conversation. He said, "You're going to get elected, and you need to know something." And I didn't know he was gay. He came out to me that night, and he said, "I want you to think very carefully about me when you're making those decisions." And it was kind of a stunning moment for 2 reasons. One, again, I didn't know, and two, I hadn't thought that much about it from kind of a policy standpoint. I was a county commissioner before that and a mayor. Never really dealt with those issues, but he knew that coming into the legislature I would be. And I would say that's really, although the starting point was much earlier than that, that was an important leaping point, I guess, for me. And through this process of public service, I've had the opportunity to meet some just amazing people in this state who have shared their stories with me. And I think that's what makes it real as part of that journey. I've said before, on civil rights issues, people don't wake up one morning morning and become a different race,
Right,
Or
right.
have a child who's a different
Right.
race. That takes time. People do wake up all the time and find out that someone they care deeply about, a family member, a friend, someone
Yeah.
maybe is part of the LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
and that starts to change their perspective. So
Right.
it really is about relationships for me
Absolutely,
and for
yeah.
most people.
Yeah. I'm also really proud of Governor Herbert. And I look at the evolution of things. So 6 years ago, we were in this big legal battle, and it was Kitchen v. Herbert.
Yeah.
And now Derek Kitchen is a state senator.
Is
And I got a list here. Governor Herbert has, since then, signed our non-discrimination law in 2015. He signed a bill to overturn an anti-gay curriculum law in 2017. Last year, he signed an LGBTQ inclusive hate crimes law. And this year, he helped us end conversion therapy for minors. That's an incredible arc.
it is, and you know, it was kind of fun. Just a few months ago, in fact, it was the last day of the session. I think we were out on a walk around the Capitol just to get some fresh air, and Derek Kitchen was walking around, and we took a picture of them together. You know, Kitchen v. Herbert, right there, and I'm grateful for that arc, and I believe I had something to do with that as we've worked so closely together and come to a better understanding. And if he were sitting here today, I think he would tell you the same thing. And we're in a much better place, a much more inclusive place. And I think that's good for the state of Utah and good for us personally.
Yeah, it's a beacon to the nation, you know, of how people, different ideologies can get together and work through and solve problems, right? So here's a big problem that we have and that you and I have worked on. We all know that the data now. Suicide rates over the last decade have spiked to 141%. This isn't something that goes away with one legislative session, right? You know, as governor, where do we go next in helping to bring these rates down?
Yeah, so there's just so much we need to do in this area, and of course, while data is still coming out, we know that what's happening now with the coronavirus is going to impact Utahns with their mental health. Of course, suicide is a big piece of that. We're really excited. This week we have another big announcement that we've been working on with legislators, as far as an educational promotional piece about keeping people alive. Helping people work through mental health issues, helping us to lift others up and get them in a good place. We've tried to be really proactive here in the state of Utah. You've been part of that. Many others have been part of that as we've worked together. The legislature, we've passed more mental health legislation over the past couple of years than probably the rest of the history of the state combined. We're putting real dollars towards suicide prevention. The Safe Utah app has been a really, really important piece of that. The mobile crisis outreach teams that we're working on with people, and then just again changing the culture around these issues is going to do more than anything else. When people feel included, when people have connection, I've often said the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. The same thing is true with mental health issues. Our LGBTQ communities, when they feel welcome, when they feel like they have a place, it's why Encircle has been so successful. I think again, giving a place to people where they can feel that connection, that's going to save more lives than really anything else we can do. And so I'm proud of what we've done over the past couple years, but we still have a ways to go for sure.
And the state has provided earmarked funds for the Utah Pride Center, for Encircle, on suicide prevention programs for those organizations. So this is a big shift.
Again, I think it's hard because we have to look back at history to see how far we've come. You know, it's easy to focus on what we're not doing, but even just the last 2 or 3 years, I gave a speech a few years ago to the LGBTQ community after the Pulse nightclub shooting, and I even think then how things have changed. I remember I had people from other states, Republicans, calling me and saying, like, you can't do that. You can't talk about those things, and now people feel. I mean, the fact that you've got 4 Republican candidates for governor who are willing to sit down and talk about these issues. That's a big change, and I hope that young people and others who are feeling like maybe they don't belong, who feel that rejection, that difficult times that we go through, can look at things like this and say, oh, okay, maybe I do fit in. Maybe I do belong.
The Pulse massacre was devastating for our
Yeah.
community, and to have an elected official stand up and show empathy and compassion was huge. And because I had a friend in India who was in India and saw you on the news in India,
Yeah.
with your speech. So it had an impact across the globe, that a Republican would step forward and it show love and compassion towards the LGBT community. And then that's beautiful.
Well, there's two sides to that. One is, how crazy is it that
Right.
a no-name politician
Right.
from
Right.
Utah, lieutenant governor, half the
Yeah.
people in Utah don't
Yeah.
even know who the lieutenant governor of
Right.
Utah is, would get that kind of
Yeah.
attention. And we received messages from all over the world,
Yeah.
from Chile, Great Britain,
Yeah.
Russia, everywhere. These messages that were coming in, very positive. And yet, I think it gave license to people, because what I heard over and over again was, thank you for saying what I feel.
Yeah.
I've just never figured out how to articulate.
Yeah.
And those are the moments that matter. I'll tell you, the best part of that was afterwards, though. After the speech, for like an hour and a half, people just came up
Yeah.
and shared their stories.
Yeah.
And they were heartbreaking. There were a lot of tears about
Yep.
people who'd been rejected by their families or others. But most importantly, it was a moment of healing, and we need more of those moments.
Absolutely. All right, so more policies. Let's jump into economics right now. We've been talking with business leaders, in particular folks from Silicon Slopes, and they say to us, the challenge that we face is trying to recruit top-tier talent to Utah, especially LGBT talent, and some of the perceptions that people have outside of Utah about our state, that we're not welcoming to LGBT people, to women, to minorities. How do we actually create those tangible changes, and then actually get that message out?
Yeah, I remember when I became lieutenant governor, Greg Bell, who was the outgoing lieutenant governor, he shared those concerns with me. I think he'd been talking to Adobe and some others. And so look, I think it's hard to change perception, right? It takes a lot of work to do that. I think it's happening. One thing I think we can do is point to that list that you just went down of Governor Herbert, that you don't see maybe in some other red states. And so that's
any red state.
That's a real way of signaling. I think it's important to have some of the voices that are here who have had positive experiences to share those with others and say, hey, Utah isn't what you think. It is a welcoming place in a very positive way. But again, I think it's going to take all of us, because it still exists. We know that. There are people out there who don't see the world the same way. But even then, when I sit down and I have those conversations, in their heart of hearts, they want to be welcoming. There's some awkward political conversations that need to happen. But I think we can also use the bully pulpit in powerful ways. You mentioned women. My lieutenant governor choice, as I'm running for office, Senator Deidre Henderson.
She's my next question here.
She's incredible, and I don't want to step on that question. But she's been involved in these issues as well. What we need to do is, it's important to be seen. It's important to find talent wherever talent exists, and in whatever form it exists. And that's how we inspire younger generations. It's how we inspire people who don't live here to want to live here. Not that we need a whole bunch of people to move here. We're doing great. We've got some growth challenges here that we're working through. But I do think that it does start at the top. And I think, the Kitchen v. Herbert, obviously, that was very contentious and a difficult period. Where we are now is very different, and people seem to recognize that. We've had top tech executives from all over the world who have met with Governor Herbert, who have brought these issues up, and he very proudly says, hey, look what we've done to make it a more inclusive state.
Great, awesome. So talking about representative government, we have the population, 50% we have women, but they're only represented 24% in the Utah legislature, and underrepresented in C-suites and commissions and boards. How do we shift the state for women and for minorities?
Sure. So there's several things we need to do. One of the things I'm really proud of that we started a few years ago, I was one of the founding board members of the Women's Leadership Institute. And the whole purpose of that, Pat Jones, who runs it's amazing, was to there are two pieces. One is get women more involved in politics, and the other is in the C-suites and boardrooms across the state. And there's an educational component to that as well. But you have to look for the talent. And this is a mistake that I've made and others have made. I like to bring up the example of my chief of staff, Kirsten Rapley, who's amazing. I was looking for a new chief of staff. I was looking everywhere, couldn't find. I thought, that'd be great if we can find the right female to be in this. That would be wonderful. But I want the most talented person. And I was looking around, looking at the kind of the same group. And my wife said to me one day, "Well, what about Kirsten?" Kirsten's desk was about 15 feet from mine, and one of the most talented people I'd ever met. And I just never thought of her in that role. And when I did, immediately made sense, and it was the best choice I could have made. She's been amazing.
Women tell me that. I've been talking to some Republican women recently, and they said sometimes the men just overlook us.
That's right.
They don't even see that we're there, and it's the network.
It is. It's that network and how to. So we have to be intentional about it, and I think that's what's missing. Sometimes people see intentionality and they reject it as saying that you're just picking a woman or a minority because you feel like you need to fill a quota or something like that, when you should really pick the best person. Well, that's not fair, because often the best people are women, minorities. We're just not looking in the right places or looking hard enough and seeing them in that role. So with Deidre and others, by the way, she is the best person. She's the best lieutenant governor candidate by far. In fact, she should probably be running for governor. But
she may someday.
I hope so. I really do. But again, if we're intentional about that and we're looking for people who are very successful and trying to picture them in new roles, we'll do better at that. I served a mission in Mexico for 2 years. We have a large Hispanic population here. About 15% of the state is Hispanic. But again, it's important for young people to see that as we're appointing judges, as we're looking for elected leaders, we need people, especially in the Republican Party, where we've done a very poor job of elevating women and elevating our multicultural communities. And it's something I'm committed to and something we need to do better at.
Good. Excellent. So the disability sort of activist world, they have a famous credo that says, "Nothing about us without us." And what I think has been so powerful about Utah the past few years is that when issues impact the LGBTQ community, we're at the table with you, working out things, negotiating, and we were able to sort of have an influence on legislation that impacts our lives. Will that continue in the Cox administration?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think that I'm one of the reasons that that's been happening in the Herbert Cox administration. And it's so critical. One of the things I love about Governor Herbert is even if he disagrees with you, he's all about bringing people together and trying to solve problems legitimately. And I've seen him change his mind on issues when he sits down and listens to someone who sees the world a different way. And it's one of the things that I'm worried about that is missing from politics at the national level. You can see it seeping in here. It's become so toxic. We all retreat to our policy corners anytime something goes on. We politicize everything, whether it's the coronavirus, whether it's mask wearing. It doesn't matter what it is. We have to pick a side and immediately go there. It doesn't have to be that way. And the way people often feel unrepresented, in politics. And while there is a process and that matters, just being heard sometimes is enough. And if we're truly listening, and again, not listening to argue, not listening to debate, but listening to understand, then there can be a meeting of the minds. And even if we don't do what that person wants, at least they have the respect and understand that they had an opportunity to influence the process. And we'll keep that going.
Beautiful, which is a great segue to my next topic. For many folks, everyone's getting kind of comfortable now with gays and lesbians in their lives. Everyone kind of knows somebody. But we have an LGB and a T. And for many people, the transgender community is a mystery. They don't know that they know people who are transgender. And as a result, we've seen a wave of legislation across the country, specifically targeting transgender youth. And so as governor, would you be willing to invite the transgender community and just to meet with them, get to know them, hear their stories and the struggles that they're dealing with?
Yeah, again, I think it's important to hear those voices. I've had conversations with the Eagle Forum and others, and in those very conversations, I've said, look, my job as governor, the kind of person I am, is we bring everybody together and we listen to their voices. Now, I have had that opportunity with many in the transgender community to come and talk to us multiple times. And it is really, really fascinating and heartbreaking at times to have those conversations and understand what they've gone through. And so yes, they're part of our state. They're an important part of our state, and they deserve to be at the table.
Awesome, beautiful, excellent. Okay, so finally then, can you really see the Republican Party expanding the tent to include LGBTQ people? Is that in the future?
Absolutely. Not only is it in the future, but it's in the past.
Okay.
And we do have members of the LGBTQ community that are Republicans. We haven't done a great job of being inclusive and broadening the tent, but some of us are trying really hard, and there's a reason for that. The Republican Party is the party of civil rights. I mean, it's the party of Lincoln. I mean, that's where it starts. It's the party of women's suffrage. We've forgotten that, many of us over time, unfortunately. But it's time to go back. I truly believe and the reason I'm a Republican is that the party of Lincoln stands for lifting the individual, giving opportunity to everyone, protecting those who are the most vulnerable, giving a voice to those who don't have a voice, and making sure that they can enjoy the American dream. That's what it's supposed to be about at its core. That's what it's been about in Utah. We lead the nation in upward mobility. Yeah. We lead the nation in lifting people out of poverty. We lead the nation in collaboration and bringing people together. And we can do a better job of that. I would like nothing more than for the Republican Party to be the place where the LGBTQ community feels comfortable, where they feel like they can have success, and where they feel like they can be represented.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, then we're wrapping up, but before we do, it's time for your LGBTQ pop quiz.
Oh boy.
You've got 3 questions.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. According to the Williams Institute at UCLA, more same-sex couples are raising children in Provo than anywhere else in America. True or false?
I'm gonna go false on that one.
Any idea where? What city?
I don't know where.
Okay, you're right. It's false, but the city is Salt Lake City.
Okay.
Has the highest percentage.
I almost said Salt Lake City.
You got it.
I almost
it's
said,
true.
We're a family-friendly state.
That's very true. Very true. Okay, all right. Category is famous lesbian rock stars. Have you ever attended either an Indigo Girls or a Brandi Carlile concerts?
I have not attended either one of those.
Katie Lang.
Neither Katie Lang.
Melissa Etheridge.
No Melissa Etheridge.
Tegan and Sarah performed at Love Loud.
I did see Tegan and Sarah perform. They opened for someone else that I went to. Was it a Killers concert? Brandon Flowers?
Yes.
Maybe.
Okay, all right. You pass. All right,
okay,
you pass.
all right. There.
Okay, all right. Final question. Favorite gay TV show, Modern Family or The Golden Girls?
Oh. There wasn't a Bert and Ernie question, so but we're going to go Modern Family. We're a big Modern Family.
Right answer.
Family.
Okay, all right. All right, Lieutenant Governor Cox, thank you so much for being here. All right, take care. He began his career in public service as a staff assistant to President Ronald Reagan. He later served as governor of Utah from 2005 to 2009. He has served each of the last 5 U.S. presidents in critical roles, including most recently U.S. Ambassador to China and U.S. Ambassador to Russia. He and his wife, Mary Kay, have 7 children, and full disclosure, his daughter, Abby, was my favorite host on The View. All right, former Governor Huntsman, welcome to the Equality Forum.
Troy, this is great. Thank you so much. You make me sound better than I am. That was a great warm-up.
Awesome.
So thanks to you and to Equality Utah generally, because this is a primary.
Right.
And people forget that. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
I think it's unprecedented.
Maybe the first.
So to you and Bruce Bastian, David Parkinson, and others who have really done a phenomenal job in bringing the communities plural together.
Yeah.
Is a wonderful tribute to you and the group.
I remember before I was involved with Equality Utah, I came to the Allies Gala, and you and Mary Kay came when you were the governor.
Right.
It was the first time I'd ever seen a Republican governor, and I thought, wow, he's governor for us too. That was a big deal at the time, you know. And so I'm really interested in your personal journey. How did you get to a place where your heart could open to our community?
An overriding philosophy for me as a human being and as an elected official has always been equality under the law.
Right.
So as a Republican, I thought that's what Abraham Lincoln always stood for.
Right.
Equality under the law. Not for some, but for all. And so, I grew up in North Hollywood, California, when my dad worked for his uncles in the egg business. And you couldn't help, even as a young kid, noticing the tectonic shifts that were happening socially with the LGBTQ community, designated differently at the time, and the discussions that were ensuing. I mean, it was a fertile time politically. And so I carry those impressions with me as I have through life. And then you find yourself, in your neighborhood in Salt Lake, and you have a gay neighbor, a friend, who comes to you one day and says, "My partner died, and I was not able to visit him in the hospital." And it's like, what is going on here? I had another friend who was a name widely recognized, whose son passed tragically, and he asked me to speak at the funeral, which I did. And I had just been elected governor at the time, and I made mention publicly of him and his partner who were there in attendance, and the tears streamed because he had never heard those words, particularly from a governor. And I thought it was just the right thing to do. It's equality under the law. And I have a niece who's gay. I have a running mate, Michelle Kafusi, mayor of Provo, whose daughter is gay. She actually married them in Provo
I saw that,
as mayor. So, they're part of our family. They're part of our community. And with each step along the way, as I would look at the deficiencies in terms of how we treat some communities as compared to others, really grated at me as an American who believes in freedom and liberty for all and equality under the law. So that's what informed me most of all in my journey. And I had the good fortune of having friends when I was elected governor. One friend, and I'll name him, Gordon Storrs.
I know Gordon,
who would come into my office. And Gordon became a great friend during the campaign. Because as we were campaigning, he and his partner came up and said, "We really want to support you." And I said, "Love to have you." He said, "We're gay." And I said, "Come on in, we're open to everybody." But he would come in my office as a newly elected governor, and he would take the time to sit just one-on-one and say, "I want you to understand some issues through my eyes. And I want you to understand my journey." And it was kind of a first time that I had really sat down in a political context and had that conversation with somebody like Gordon. And I'm forever grateful for him and for the education he brought to me. And I just listened and I learned and I tried to put myself in his shoes. And it was transformational. And it showed the power of information, knowledge, education, sharing stories and experiences. I think that's been an important part of the journey for all of us.
That's how hearts open. So I want to take you back through time. It's 2009. Amendment 3 is the law of the land in Utah, which bans any form of relationship recognition for same-sex couples. Proposition 8 is passed in California. There is so much political acrimony in the state. There are protests and rallies, and we are at each other's throats. And this is before my time at Equality Utah, but the organization came forward to the legislature with a Common Ground initiative, which was a series of bills to provide legal protections for LGBTQ families. As the governor of Utah, you broke rank with Republicans, and you supported the Common Ground initiative and civil unions. This was 6 years before it actually passed as law here in the state. Why? That's a political risk for you. Why did you do it?
Because I felt it was the right thing to do. And I had enough conversations and enough interaction with friends in the LGBTQ community to help me understand their journeys, their needs, and a heightened need for equality in our state. And it bothered me until we got to full equality, particularly on marriage. We were deficient. And although I couldn't come right out and say marriage equality, I wanted to support a very important incremental step that would get people talking about it. And I thought, when the governor talks about something or announces something, that opens a floodgate.
It does. And 6 years later, 6 years later, it all became reality. And the Utah
Well,
legislature passed non-discrimination protections.
some would say
Yeah.
that it never is a positive thing in politics to lead out on issues.
Right.
Everybody follows,
Right.
because there's a lot of pain that you have to endure when you lead
Yeah.
out. And I look back at the commentary and the hate mail I got. I remember so well what people in my own office,
Yeah.
now in power,
Yeah.
said about it.
Right.
And I kept a couple of letters in my drawer as governor that were the most hate-filled letters I'd ever received.
Right.
And I tried to, again, put myself in the shoes of those in the community who have to endure this kind of thing, and did, particularly in the early days, and some
Yeah.
still do.
Yeah.
And I would pull the letter out every now and again from respectable people.
Right.
And I would
Right.
reread it just to be reminded of what hate can be. And it reinforced me. It gave
Right.
me greater resolve to carry on and to do the right thing. So I was alone.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of allies at the time, but I felt in my heart it was exactly the right thing to do.
All right, so this will give you some perspective, I think. This comes from last year. Okay, the Public Religion Research Institute came out with a survey that revealed that 77% of Utahns support LGBT non-discrimination laws. We tied with Vermont as second place in the nation. New Hampshire beat us. But Utah has higher public support for non-discrimination laws than liberal California and New York and Oregon.
Imagine
So
that.
does that surprise you?
Imagine it does not, because of the goodness of the hearts and souls of people in this state.
Yeah.
Once people understand, once there is a thorough discussion, people have big hearts, and they're embracing and tolerant and accepting in this state.
Right.
Those numbers are just the reverse of what they were
Right.
in 2009.
Right. We've come a long way.
You can get a sense of the fury
Yeah.
that came toward the governor, but it started a conversation.
Yeah.
And people look back on that, and some remember, some don't.
Yeah.
But they remember that may have been a discussion that created a turning point of sorts.
It certainly was. So in contrast, I'm curious about your experience as ambassador to Russia for the Trump administration. This country has a notorious track record on LGBTQ rights. We've seen laws exist to censor queer literature, and public sentiment seems to be against the community seems to be on the rise there. So how do minorities fare in those kind of conditions?
Poorly, very poorly. I made it a point both in China, which suffers the same plight, those who are members of the LGBTQ community. They are shunned and discriminated against and persecuted. And they saw the U.S. Embassy as a safe haven in both cases. And we would allow young kids to gather in the U.S. Embassy and to talk and to share stories and to feel a sense of strength coming from American values. And, whether it's under a Republican or a Democrat, because I've served both overseas, the American values, that spotlight that is American values, is bright. Right. And people in Russia know that. And they see our flag and they see our U.S. Embassy as a safe haven for things like LGBTQ rights. And we would be, targeted by the Russian government for doing that kind of thing. But it was an extension of our values as Americans, our acceptance, our tolerance, our sense of equality under the law. So I saw that firsthand in both countries. And you know what? It made me proud to be an American. Yeah. Sometimes we come around late in the game, but we come around. Yeah. And we eventually find our sweet spot of equality. Okay. And that's where we are.
Yeah. Well, let's expand the conversation a bit. When we look at data in our state, we see that while women make up 50% of the population, they are grossly underrepresented in the legislature, in C-suites and boards and commissions. So what can we do? As governor, how can you elevate women and minorities in your administration and in our state?
Well, they can follow the example of women in higher education in this state, where now half of our leading institutions, our universities, are run by women. You can look at some of the largest cities in Utah, which are now run by women. Right. So Michelle Kafusi, who I brought in as my running mate, is the first woman to run Provo in its entire history. Right. So I don't think, there's no success like success. Right. And when you see role models like Michelle, when you see role models like, the president of the University of Utah,
Mm-hmm.
among others.
Right.
That serves to stimulate and inspire others who might be saying, no, there's a ceiling. But no, contrary to that, there are examples of success. So, you can say it's nice to have maybe a quota system here or there. I have found that there is nothing like somebody or a few breaking through
Right.
and actually getting the job done and creating hope and a pathway for those who would like to follow.
Because when you're a minority and you see somebody that looks like you in a position of power, it fills you with hope. It fills you with a sense of possibility.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
So that's why it's so important. And we'd love to see your administration really reflect, the people of Utah. People of color.
Yeah.
We would love to see LGBT people in your administration.
This is such an important point. I had an Ethnic Affairs Advisory Council that has since been closed down. And my goal was to bring people in to listen.
Right.
Because you've been given
Right.
2 ears and 1 mouth, and we rarely use it in that ratio. And,
Right.
and to hear and to see what can be done. I'm raising a Chinese daughter, and I'm raising an Indian daughter. And they're old enough now to be aware of who they are.
Right.
My daughters of color were treated differently in Russia.
Right.
Because of that.
Right.
They learned these lessons early on. And I say, I want a state that has representatives, that has leaders and role models who look like they look.
Yeah.
Not just for look's sake, but for performance sake, because these girls and people like them have so much to give. They're so energized.
Yep.
They're so well educated and so passionate about being an American.
Right.
That you want to see them get the same shot as everybody else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So many people in Utah are becoming more familiar with the gay community, the lesbian community, the bisexual community, but there's still a lot of people who don't understand the T in LGBT, which is our transgender population. And as a result, we've seen a wave of legislation in states all across the country that specifically target transgender kids, transgender adults. And so, what we would love to see in our next governor is someone who is willing to come in and meet with the transgender community, get to know them, get to know their lives, get to know their struggles. Can we expect that from the Huntsman administration?
Of course you can.
Awesome.
I will do exactly for the T community what I have done for all other communities.
Right.
It's a listening ear, and it's an ultimate goal and philosophy of equality under the law.
Yeah.
I was reminded, Troy, that so I have 2 sons serving in the U.S. Navy. What did the U.S. Navy do last week? They announced that this longstanding petition by a transgendered officer would be accepted, and that they would be able to serve with all rights and privileges like anybody else. Yes. And I saw that. I said, again, the United States military is ahead of everybody else in terms of doing what is
There is a legal battle right now. There is a legal battle.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. There always is.
Yeah.
There always is.
Right. So and again, I would love the opportunity, for you to meet with transgender veterans, and really just again hear about their service, hear about their stories, and so we can make that happen.
Always an open door with me.
Awesome, excellent. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the nation right now. We are living in this hyper-polarized, hyper-partisan era. And I don't know. I heard the '60s were bad, but I've read about them. But it seems really bad right now, and especially if you are a minority, if you are a refugee or an immigrant or a person of color, LGBT. Often it feels like we are the targets of a lot of divisive rhetoric. A lot of it comes from the top down. As governor, what can you do to really help unite our state and help us unite our country?
I think messaging here, Troy, is so important. Because we are all Americans at the end of the day.
Right.
We all have one vote.
Right.
We all share the same basic promise of our founding documents, given to everybody equally. And when we forget that and start targeting individuals or communities as less than, that is wholly un-American. And unfortunately, politics in particular has become a professional game. In the old days, it was you go out and run for office and you get volunteers and you get campaign managers. Today, you have entire industries built up around opposition research, about fake, messaging. And I just look at, the messaging on our Facebook and other social media, the trolls. You can't even
vicious.
get messaging through sometimes because you got to break through the trolls. And listen, I've seen the Russians are the best in the world at doing this kind of stuff. And a lot of Americans don't even realize it isn't even America that is pushing and promoting these narratives. And we have to, we benefit from the advance of technology, but it's a detriment in some senses in the way that it divides us and polarizes us. We have to rise above it and remember that we've all been given a promise as Americans. And we have to strive every day and work valiantly year after year to make sure that promise of being an American and being a Utahn is salient for all citizens.
Excellent. Okay, all right. So now it is time for our LGBTQ pop quiz. So we're going to see how you do. Okay, 3 questions. All right. According to the Gallup survey, Salt Lake City is per capita the 10th gayest city in America. True or false?
Oh, I think it's better than that. I would say false.
That's false. We are the 7th gayest city in America.
That's right. I read that somewhere.
Gayer than Manhattan and Los Angeles. So, yeah, take that, Hollywood. Okay, all right. Category is world famous gays. What famous gay mathematician helped Allied forces crack the Nazi Enigma code and ultimately help end World War II?
That would be Alan Matheson Turnig, I think. PhD from Princeton University.
That's right. Very good job.
Yeah.
Excellent. Final question. LGBTQ Utahns and Latter-day Saints share a mutual love for Broadway musicals. What was the last Broadway musical you saw? And give me a 1-sentence review.
Oh, I haven't seen a Broadway musical in a very, very long time.
Mary Kay,
but
we have to work on this.
Yeah, instead of Broadway musicals, because we've been busy, and overseas, you just don't have access to this.
All right.
I watch Tan France on his program.
Do you watch Queer Eye?
Yeah, I have, and it brings it all home here to the state, and with probably our highest profile member of the LGBTQ
I think community. You're still going to fail with that question, but that's all right. Okay.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Not bad at all. You got Alan Turing, that's fantastic. So, all right, Governor Huntsman, thank you so much for being part of the
Troy, it's a great honor and privilege. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you. He grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but got caught up in Utah politics and stuck around after college. He was elected to the Utah House of Representatives in 2002 and worked his way up to become Speaker of the House from 2014 to 2016. He and his wife, Krista, have 3 kids in Draper. He likes to be in the room where it happens. Yes, his favorite Broadway musical is Hamilton. Mr. Hughes, welcome to the Equality Forum.
Troy, I'm happy to be here, brother.
So good to have you here. Okay. So what I know about you, this may not be public knowledge, but you have a soft spot in your heart for oddballs, misfits, and peculiar people. It's true. How'd that happen?
So look, that's a funny. My friends might not like those characterizations that you've just described them as, but I would say that I have, it might not be well known, but I have friends from all walks of life.
Yep.
It's an eclectic group of friends.
It is.
Many of my friends aren't friends with each other other than maybe I'm the common denominator, but it is true. It's true that when I had my announcement running for governor, you had cowboy hats and people that grew up in Compton that were all kind of hanging out with each other. We had the Chinese students that go to BYU, their little student union that was there. I've met them.
Wow,
great group of students. Just a lot. I'm talking, there's not in life, if you know anybody, there are probably somewhere in that group friends of mine.
Right. So then it wasn't a big leap for you back in 2015 when we came to you and said, hey, we want some help passing a non-discrimination law. No, and LGBTQ community steps up and you welcomed us into the door.
Absolutely. And this is the issue. It was a very broad approach.
Yeah.
The reason I think my life has been like this Forrest Gump movie where you just have all these different friends and everything, I've just never really, I've tried at least not to put people in categories. Right. And if we were trying to get some good public policy accomplished that could be broadly approached and treat each other like a two-way street, just golden rule stuff, right? I was excited to do it. And it was good to see that it was other people that had not typically wanted to come together to find common ground were doing it. So I jumped all over it. I was happy to do it.
And that was a big moment because we did have people, some with very strong ideological divides, and you had people with very competing interests, and you had to sort of navigate all of those demands to actually come to what we finally did. And that's hard work.
It was. People don't know, that was a big, big year. There were a lot of things in that 2015 session that happened. It was my first year as speaker. What many people might not know is it was probably the second most time that of all the things I spent, issues I spent time on, the second most, and in a session that had, again, a lot of big, big issues. That one, we spent hours upon hours upon hours, not only in the speaker's office, but in meetings and bringing people together sometimes. I think we had to have a House standing committee while we were on the floor having our floor time, which we had to suspend the rules to even be able to do. Because it's not the way you're supposed to do it. But there were members that to get to that place, to have everyone come together, they just felt so strongly to have a standing committee in the House and have a committee meeting. And so you had to do those things. You had to just keep getting everyone together and just keep trying to build. And there were a lot of complaints along the way. But I was very proud of that. I'm actually surprised since we all came together that way, we haven't seen that as a stronger template nationally. Or even talk about it much in our state now. I wish we would, because I thought there was a lot of unity that was felt there.
It was pretty phenomenal, and I think it's just, we have so much, when we're on different political sides, we have so much suspicion of each other across the aisle, right?
That's true, that's true.
And so it's hard for us to actually just sort of be vulnerable, open ourselves up, and actually take a leap of faith.
It's funny you say that, because people have asked me that are Republicans. I'm in a Republican primary right now, and so word got out we were going to have these great forums, and they said, "So you're meeting with Equality Utah, and what is your campaign strategy here?" And says, there's no strategy. Troy asked me, and I said yes, and it's not any deeper than that. I'm happy to sit down and talk.
To my knowledge, we know this is the first time it's happened in Utah, and probably any other red state. Maybe the first time in the nation that this kind of forum has happened. And I love kind of being an iconoclast that way, and actually define expectations.
And look, this is where I probably differ from even the politics that you hold or others. I'm just not into identity politics. I just am not. I don't want to have in my mind these guardrails of who people are or what define people. I'm just really not into that. I just like the idea that we can talk about issues or talk about whatever you want, and we're not always going to agree. And anybody that tells you they always agree, they're not telling you the truth, because you just don't. Even my wife, sometimes there'd be issues that we're dealing with at the Capitol, and she'd say, "Don't vote for that. If you vote for that, don't even come home." And I'm going, "I'm voting for it." So anyway, so it's just public policy. But
well, I think what's been so significant for us as a community, and where things really changed in 2015. Before that, when issues that really impacted the LGBT community were being debated, we were never really at the table, right? We weren't in the room where it happened, right? But that changed after 2015, and it's been good since then as we've worked through other difficult issues like hate crimes, for example. We've been at the table, and what we would hope to see in the Hughes administration moving forward, that same relationship. When issues impact our community, we're at the table working through them together with you.
And you would, because we've taken some very disparate groups that have, and it's easy to be keyboard warriors in 2020. It's easy to throw out insults or to kind of stay in your circle of people and maybe be disparaging. But when you get people in a room together and you got to start looking at one another and be adults, and people start to be more respectful, and then that's where you start to find common ground. And as long as there's that idea that we're going to find common ground, perfect's not going to be the enemy of good. It hasn't failed us. We've been able to get some good issues accomplished. And what I've told conservatives is, you don't have, sometimes compromise sounds like you have to give up your beliefs, or that you have to cut a baby in half, as the saying goes. You don't. I think I can as a conservative approach an issue. Moderates, liberals can approach the same issue, not abandon those beliefs or those objectives, but still find common ground. And we've seen it. So that's kind of how I'm wired. I love moving the needle, getting things done. In all of politics and policy, it's addition. It's all addition. If you're not, go write books and give speeches. If you're not interested in bringing people along, because it doesn't work that way.
I hear you. Okay, excellent. Well, let's talk about a difficult, challenging issue for our state. We've all seen the data that suicide is the leading cause of death for young people in our state. We don't exactly have good, solid data on how Many of those are identify as LGBTQ.
Yes.
But so, what kind of policies and messaging would you like to send out to young people who are struggling in this area?
So this is a tough one, but I don't. So usually when you have an issue that's really difficult, there's another side to that issue trying to push back. I don't know the pro-suicide lobby that's out there. I think that what you have in public policy makers is that we are seeing the numbers that are so startling and about suicide generally, but the teen suicide. And so we did some things in the legislature on the Safe UT app, and we have now principals of high schools reaching out to students, even on a weekend, if that app lets them know that there's a student or a child that's struggling. So we're trying very, very hard to address this issue. My administration, we take it very seriously. We would take it as seriously as we did when I was the Speaker of the House, where we were trying very hard to get to the bottom of it. Because as you say, I'm struggling as an old school guy. I'm having a hard time understanding what's happening around me. I don't want to. So I think years ago I would have said, you got to toughen up. If you're going through this, it's because you don't have enough to worry about. Or I had these ideas in my head that it was maybe a society that's too soft or too affluent. And so I know that's wrong. But what it is, if it's technology, if it's these social issues that kids are grappling with, I don't know the answers. But what I do know is I don't want to see it happen. And it's happening at such a high number that it scares me as a dad. I'm a dad. I got 3 kids. I don't want to see this. So I don't think in any of the candidates, I don't think you have anyone that isn't concerned or wouldn't put their full weight into this issue. It's just to your point of getting to the data and understanding what's happening here.
So say that there's an LGBT kid, he feels like a misfit. I don't fit in. What message as governor do you want to send to that youth?
Well, I'd tell them what I tell my friends that are gay. I'd say, man, you are my friend. That is the bottom line. Our relationships and how we hold our relationships as people, that's the most important thing of all. Everything else is ancillary to that. If someone is going through issues in their lives, it can't get so scary or so dark that they think it would interrupt your family relationships, your relationships with your friends. If we are truly a family and if we truly are friends, that love has to be felt, and you've got to be that type of person as a family member or a friend. So if that issue is what's driving a lot of this, this trouble and this emotional, turmoil, I think we all have to just let everybody know loud and clear, we're people. You're my friend. That's it. Right? And everything else may ripple from that, but that's the core of it. And I think that I think we're getting there. I think in 2020 we're starting to understand those things. And look, when we say that, we have to give each other space too, where we have our faith, our religious beliefs, our belief. We all give each other that. We all, and so if we do that together, and that's a two-way street, I think we're going to be okay. Eventually.
We have to create those enduring ties and that sense of community, that sense of belonging for folks, right?
I absolutely believe it.
True. Okay. So now I know another soft spot you have in your heart is for veterans.
I do.
Absolutely. So you've always been their advocate, and there are a group of veterans in Utah who are struggling. Did you know that the U.S. military is the single largest employer of transgender Americans in the country?
I don't believe that.
I've
never heard that statistic. I think you made that up to see me go, huh?
It's fact.
No, really?
Yeah, it's true. But many of the trans community they've served our country with distinction. They've worn the uniform of our country, and right now since 2017 they've been banned from serving in the military. And so, as governor, would you go with me to the VA hospital and meet with transgender veterans and just hear their stories and let them talk to you about their service?
100%. So this goes back to the last question. The key, they're veterans. They served their country. They served us. They protect our freedoms so we could live in this country, have this conversation. I would never put different distinctions away, that would make one veteran different than another veteran. I want to reach out to all veterans. I want to be someone, I think I have it as a public servant, work to help veterans. Because they make lousy lobbyists, by the way. They're never looking out for themselves. The reason why they serve their country is there's something.
Selfless.
So they're not looking out for themselves or for veterans. And so we have to do that. And Troy, I can tell you, it doesn't matter gender, it doesn't matter if you're a veteran, I'm your advocate, I'm your friend. And that's the beginning and end of it.
Excellent. It's easy to fear what we don't understand, and a lot of people are comfortable with the gays now, right? More so. Not everybody, but many people are just getting to know the transgender community. There's a lot of questions people have, and so it's just having that conversation, educating ourselves, and
Look,
it's really
it's that way with everything. Look,
Yep.
I think that as human beings, we're comfortable around the things we know or
Right.
we understand, and then when things that we don't understand are around us, there's even a subconscious recoil that happens. So I coached Little League football with two guys, African American guys that were Adrian Jefferson and Quentin Jefferson, and the way they're not from Utah, and there's Adrian Jefferson's son was in my son's age group and same team, and I was an assistant coach, actually a water boy, but hydration's important. So
all right,
but I noticed them being treated differently as coaches in ways that I wasn't comfortable with, and I don't think that anyone was singling them out or trying to do it. It was the cadence or the way they talk or the way and even when I say that, it sounds like I'm treating them like fish in an aquarium. I'm not. But what I'm saying is they did not fit the typical demographic of people that live in Utah. And when they were coaching and we were on the field and just their interaction with parents or referees or anything, I noticed a difference. And that is the human nature we have to be more sensitive of and overcome. Right. We got to just treat each other, as people.
That's the perfect segue to my next question. And, we live in this hyper-polarized political time, hyper-partisan.
We do.
And people, misfits on all sides of the political spectrums, often feel left out. And so on one side of the spectrum, you may have refugees or immigrants or LGBT folks. On another side of the spectrum, you may have people of faith or people from rural communities who feel like they've been left behind in America. How do we ratchet down that polarization in our country, and how do we let every misfit know that they have a place in the American dream?
So there's two things going on there. There's the human nature that you're more comfortable with what you know than what you don't, and that is, and I would say that's not unique to any demographic of people that are different. I think that's just people and human nature, and we have to be sensitive to that and overcome it. But the other one is, look, we got bullies out there. I was thinking about this when I was driving here. So my sisters, my stepfather is Hungarian, and so they call them mill hunkies. They worked in the steel mills in Pittsburgh, and my stepfather was 6'6", 400 pounds. All his brothers, there's not a brother of his that was shorter than 6'3", big guys. So my sisters were born big. They're big. I have a sister that's in just height alone, 6 foot and 6'3", my two sisters. And they were bullied. I'm going to tell you, they were bullied when they were young, when we were in school. And I found myself, I think I started getting in fights in school because of, in school or at the community pool, because of the way my sisters were being treated. And so people spot things that are, again, back to this being different. And I think that there's bullies. There's people that look for those differences. And if they feel or sense a sense of weakness, bullies never pick on people that are ready to fight for themselves.
Right.
So I think that what we have to do, and what I did then, I think you have to push back on bullies. There's always bullies. There's bullies in every. So if someone feels like a misfit, someone feels like they're not there, there's something about their lives that they feel they're on the outside looking in. There's probably going to be bullies in that world too.
What if the bully is in the White House?
So I'm telling you, I would never be okay with that. And to the degree that was being, there was a sense of that, I would weigh in and I'd lean in on that, and I'd make sure that sense, because I don't.
For a lot of us, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, and I will tell you that my experience has been opposite of that. I think there's been some things for the little guy and gal, the people that might not have, that might feel like they're on the outside looking in, that this president has defended, and so I think there's that opportunity. I'll just say that. And look, if you have a Democrat that wins in the White House, and we're a red state like this, those people that are close to that, so say Joe Biden were to win, those in our state who would be close to him and that administration would be a great asset to the state. And I think that I present that with this administration. And so, but that's who I am. And I think that we've got to realize we're not as different as people may think. And then we got to watch out for bullies. I think they're out there. Okay, excellent. All right, so it's time now for the LGBTQ pop quiz. Okay, all right. Okay. So, all right. Greatest gay musician, Freddie Mercury or Lil Nas X? Oh, I'll have to say Freddie Mercury.
Oh,
I'm gonna have
good.
to. I love Nas X a lot, but I'm telling you, Queen, man, there's just too much there. There's too many songs I will never stop listening to.
All right,
there.
all right. Good answer, good answer. All right. Who's your favorite gay man crush? Senator Jim DeBacchus or Tiger King's Joe Exotic?
Ah! So here's the deal. Let's the premise of gay crush, okay?
Okay.
I'm a little still homophobic. I'm still a little old school here.
It's
So,
all right. Okay.
who do I admire the most? Man, because I just watched that Tiger King and I could not be more amused. I just thought that was the funniest show. I want to know if you like Joe Exotic, because he was just like gun-toting. It was just so fun to watch him. But I got to go with Jim. Jim DeBacchus has been my pal.
He'll be glad to hear that.
Yeah, he's my pal. We've had so much fun working on issues together. We fight when it's time to fight on issues, but it's never personal. And we've actually, I think, worked on some important things together as well. So he's that's my guy.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Last question. Okay. Finish the lyric. It ain't my fault that I'm out here getting loose. Gotta blame it on the goose. Gotta blame it on my.
On my juice, gotta blame it on my juice. Huh?
Got it. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Sante, you stay. Excellent. All right.
I like that song.
All right.
It's on my Sirius XM.
Lizzo will love that. Okay. All right. Well, right.
Lizzo, yep.
Former Speaker Greg Hughes, thank you so much for being on the Equality Forum.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Take care. He's a Utah native who graduated from the University of Utah. He was the Salt Lake County Republican Chair from 2009 to 2011, and then the Utah Republican Chair from 2011 to 2013. He and his wife Caroline have 4 children, and he's broken the hearts of gay men all across the state. Thomas Wright, welcome to the Equality Forum.
Great to be here. Great intro. Thank you.
Good to have you here.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. You were the Salt Lake County Republican Chair.
Yep.
And during 2009, 2011, that was a tumultuous political time for our community with your community, right? And so we were at political odds. There was debates and protests. But what I remember about you at the time is that you were willing to kind of come forward, meet our community, and actively engage us. Why?
Because I believe in equality. I believe that we're all created equal and we all have the right to pursue happiness the way that we see fit. And you know what? One of my greatest memories of being the Utah Republican Party chairman was leaving the debate between Mia Love and Jim Matheson, at KSL News Radio. And I walked from there to the conference center, the Salt Palace Convention Center, and attended the Allies dinner.
Right.
And I remember when I walked in, everyone was kind of, talking and whispering, and there I was. It just never occurred to me that there was anything that was a big deal.
And the LGBT people throw good parties, right?
Yeah, it was a great party, but
that's what people don't realize about they're missing out on our community, right?
And they were very welcoming and friendly, and I had a great dinner, and there was a great program. And
good.
Yeah,
excellent.
It was fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
My first memory of you, there was this Republican fundraiser, and people could bid to win box seats at the Utah Jazz with you. And Jim DeBacchus goes in and he bids on it and he wins it.
That's right.
And then he packs the entire box with LGBT people.
That's right. I remember
right? And
that.
we just crowded it right into there to sort of win you over.
Right.
Right.
It was great. I remember that night. And look, I mean, I say this all the time. One of my best friends from all of my political service is Jim DeBacchus.
Yeah.
He was the Democrat chairman when I was the Republican chairman. We traveled the state together.
Right.
We made appearances together. Stephen and Caroline have become friends. Good. We've spent time together. And so, it's really unlikely, but we've never had a cross word. We don't agree on all the issues. We don't agree on all the policies, but we've never had a cross word. We've never had that awkward moment because we just know what we each believe, but we're very respectful of each other. And that's what we need more of.
Yeah, and how do we do that? I mean, how do we expand the Republican tent so that LGBT people feel comfortable being there? It's been so divisive. But that spirit, that relationship that you developed with Senator DeBacchus, how can we not seem to get that kind of spirit in the country right now?
Just love, listening and love.
That's kind of a radical idea.
A little, maybe, but for me it's about let's love people more than we love our political opinions. Let's start with people. Let's love people. Let's try to meet people on their ground and say, you know what, I want to understand you better. Will you understand me better?
Right.
Let's listen to each other. Let's love each other. Look, Troy, life is short. And look, during this pandemic, haven't we learned what should be our priorities?
Right.
And it's given us an opportunity to reset and to really think about what's important in our lives. And those relationships are really important. You're not going to take your political ideologies with you, but kindness and love last forever.
Right.
I really believe that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important that we see each other's humanity, right?
Absolutely.
That we look into someone's eyes and we see ourselves reflected back,
Right.
and recognizing that the things that connect us are so much stronger than the things that divide us.
Right.
And yet here we are at this hyper polarized, hyper partisan time in our country when we really need to be finding ways to come together.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with that.
Okay.
And then we can talk with the politics after that.
Right.
But let's treat each other civilly. Let's love each other.
I'm on board.
You know,
I'm on board.
There's and especially now, like, look, the mental health challenges our state faces,
Right.
the suicide
Right.
rate, we're number 1 in suicides
Yeah.
for our teenagers.
Yeah.
Man, we need to stop and just talk to people.
Yeah.
Just hear them.
Well, let's talk about that because that's actually my next question.
Right.
I mean, we do know that since 2011, suicide rates for young people have spiked 141%. We don't know, we don't have data on how many of those are identify as LGBTQ, but we do know from national data that our community is disproportionately more likely to attempt suicide. So what kind of policies then will the right administration implement?
Yeah, we have to declare war on mental health in the state of Utah. I am not comfortable with Utah being number 1 for teenage suicide.
Right.
I'm not comfortable with having too few healthcare professionals. Mental health care professionals, we have a real opportunity with 150,000 Utahns having filed for unemployment to retrain them. And I know a lot of them would love to be mental health care experts. We need them in rural Utah. We need them in urban Utah. And we need to make sure that people can get help. There is nothing wrong with having mental illness.
Right.
Nobody chooses it.
Right.
You know, nobody chooses physical ailments. Nobody chooses mental ailments. We just need to get help, and we need to be treated, and we need those professionals ready to go. That's number 1. Number 2, we need to let our young people know nothing's wrong with them.
Right.
We love them just the way they are. Just come to us as you are. We'll accept you. And as governor, I want to talk about mental health and LGBTQ issues.
Cool.
So just to destigmatize them. Let's just talk about them more.
Right.
And I think the more conservatives talk about those issues, that we find common ground on, we can meet each other in a safe place, and we can tell our youth there's nothing wrong with you. Right?
Yeah. So if there's an LGBTQ youth who's struggling and looks to you as governor, what message do you want them to hear from you?
That we love them.
Yeah.
That they're safe in Utah. That we want them here. That they are productive members of society. That they're no different than anybody else. And that I want to learn from them and I want to listen to them. And that they don't need to go anywhere else and they don't need to be anybody different. They just need to be who they are, and that Governor Wright loves them.
Cool. Don't need to move to San Francisco. Don't need to move to New York.
No. Everybody's welcome here. Isn't that who we are? That's what I love about Utah is our diversity, which blows people away when you go outside of Utah and you talk about diversity. They think there's no way Utah could have diversity, but we do.
Yeah.
And our ability to find common ground and to treat each other respectfully. That's who we are. That's who we want to be. And that's who I'll be as governor. I will be a governor for all people in the state of Utah.
Cool. Excellent. Good. Okay, let's build on that one then. So we do have a representative form of government. Women make up 50% of our state, but they certainly don't make up 50% of our legislature, our C-suites, our boardrooms in the corporate world. You know, what kind of policies can you implement to elevate not just women, but minorities as well?
Yeah, I think the key there is to have a commitment to hiring the best people. Not trying to hire minorities or trying to hire women, hiring the best people, because the best people are often women and minorities and different people. And if we start to look at it that way, and not just the tradition of who's easiest to hire, but who's the most qualified. Like, I will tell you, in my business, I have 14 offices, about 250 people in Utah I'm responsible for. I've built this business I'm really proud of. I built it with my employees during the Great Recession when things were really tough. And almost everyone, I think 10 of the 11 senior staff in my company are women.
Cool, yeah.
You know, Shane and I are the only men. And it didn't really occur to me until we did a Zoom during the pandemic, and on the screen, there we all were. And it never occurred to me.
Yeah.
Do we need to seek it out and make sure it's happening? Yes, we need to be cognizant of it. But I think just hiring the most qualified people will lead you to those
Yeah.
people, and that's why they want to be hired. When I talk to women and other people, they want to be hired because they're best for the
They're
job.
confident. Oh, sure, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I think if we just have that mindset,
Right. Right.
it will start to balance itself out. But we
Yeah.
need to make a concerted effort.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple prominent Republican women this week as I was kind of prepping and I was kind of talking about these issues with them, and they said, you know, it's just so common. They told me that women just won't even be considered for a certain commission or a board position, and that they're not even seen as someone who'd actually want to actually step into those roles.
Yeah. You know, I read a report once. When I was chairman, I had a really concerted effort to get more women to run for public office.
Right.
And we committed additional resources if women would run. We held forums and trainings. And I read an article in the New York Times. This had to have been like 2012, 2013, but I never forgot this, Troy. The article said, women don't run for public office. The number one reason in this study that I read was they don't feel like they're ready. So men think they're ready,
Right?
right?
There's a little arrogance there,
yeah. And men and women kind of think, you know what, I'm not ready. I need more experience. And so our goal was to help them understand that they are ready, that they can serve, and that they're as ready as their male counterparts, and that it's okay to step up. So there's just a little bit different of an approach there. Right. So just giving them confidence, and that's why my daughter's here with me today.
Good.
And I've tried to include my 3 daughters in this campaign, that they can do anything that men can do,
for sure,
and that they're just as qualified and just as ready as their male counterparts.
There was this great story in the New York Times last week that countries that are led by women presidents and prime ministers, are actually beating the coronavirus better than any other place in the world, right? So New Zealand, Germany, etc. So when women lead, the coronavirus recedes.
And like I said, in my company, I've watched these women lead.
Yeah.
They are very compassionate, connected leaders, and they have they're incredible leaders. So couldn't agree with you more on that.
Bring more on it. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the Republican elephant in the room. All right. Your running mate is Congressman Rob Bishop. Historically, he has not been super supportive of our community, if at all. He has a 0% rating on the Human Rights Campaign Congressional Scorecard. If you win, there's going to be a lot of LGBTQ Utahns that are going to be really, really suspicious that they perhaps won't be welcome in your administration.
Well, look, I'm going to be the governor.
Yep.
I'm running for governor. Rob is my running mate, and he's lieutenant governor. Rob is a good man. He's a decent man. I've gotten to know him well, so I want people to know that about him. You know, he has a record. He should be asked those questions directly, and he should answer those questions of people he's running for office. Those are fair game. But I'm the governor.
Right.
You know where I stand. You know I'm an ally.
Yeah, yes, I do.
And you know where I stand.
Yep.
And you know how strong I am on these issues of equality and making sure that we see eye to eye and that we're working together. And so your viewers and your members can be confident that Governor Wright is going to be who he has always been.
Okay, so I want to sit down with Rob then.
Let's do it.
Can we make that happen?
I will make it happen.
I'm all.
I think it'd be great.
People evolve and change. I used to be an intern for the Eagle Forum. Okay, so and now look at me. Yeah. But I would love to have the opportunity to sort of engage, and be at the table with them and chat with them through some of these issues.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
All right, we're going to do that.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so we've had great progress in our country. People are really opening their hearts and to the LGBT community. Particularly though, it's the L, G, and the B, and the T is still there's a lot of mystery, and a lot of people are suspicious and don't really understand because they don't know that they've actually met transgender people. Okay. So I'm curious, as the next governor of Utah, will you be willing to meet with transgender leaders, transgender youth, and get to hear their stories, learn their struggles, and when issues arise related to that community, will you have them at the table with you?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I think I said earlier, I want to be a governor for all Utahns.
Right.
And that includes the T, as you put it. Let's make sure that they feel listened to. And like I said earlier, I want everyone to feel welcome in the state of Utah. Good. I will meet, I have been the candidate that's put my cell phone number out. I've said I will talk to anybody anytime. I'm not going to change my number.
Yep.
And I mean that. And when I'm governor, anybody would be welcome to come in and have a seat at the table and talk.
Good.
And let's find common ground.
Right.
Let's see what we can agree on. But let's understand each other. Let's love each other.
Yeah.
I really believe in that. Love can change everything.
Well, I think that's what's been so powerful about the last 5 years in the state. As issues like non-discrimination have come up, or hate crimes, or conversion therapy, all controversial issues, there's been a willingness for the state to actually bring the LGBTQ community to the table and to help work through these issues. And I think that's why Utah has really moved forward in ways that other conservative states haven't done so yet, you know? And so we would love to see that relationship continue to build in the Wright administration.
Well, and I appreciate that. And you know what Governor Wright would do because you've seen me do it. I'm not in here telling you what I will do. I have a history. I came to the Allies dinner in 2012. I didn't see any other Republican there.
That's right. That's right.
And I watched you bring your candidates that you were endorsing for office up, and every single one of them was a Democrat.
Right.
And I remember, I think I was texting you and Jim Duvakis like, hey, you know, we've got to get some Republican representation because there's some Republican-friendly candidates on some of these issues. And I also made calls on the non-discrimination bill to legislators.
Great.
And I was ahead of that curve. I wasn't in a high-profile enough position to become like the face of it, but I was about inclusion, equality, and making sure that everyone is treated equally in our society. That's really important to me.
It gave me a lot of hope to see the party chair, you know, stepping up and engaging our community. You know, it was noticed.
And the keynote speaker even said, hey, the Republican Party chairman is here.
Right.
That's a big deal. And I put my arm around a lot of people there and told them, hey, you know, we don't have to agree on every single issue, but we can love each other, we can listen to each other, we can learn from each other. And look how far our state has come. So I wasn't the only leader. There was a lot of other great leaders that made this happen in Utah, but I was certainly one of them. And so
one of the early ones.
So when people look at my campaign and who I am, they know who I am.
Great.
They know where I stand.
Okay, well, now we're really going to see where you are because it's time for the LGBTQ pop quiz. All right, so I got 3 questions for you. Okay, this will decide everything here for you. All right, so who is the greatest gay 80s pop star, Boy George or George Michael?
Oh my gosh, that is a really hard question. I was a big Wham fan, so I'm going to go with Boy George.
Okay, all right.
On this one, but George Michael was amazing too. Amazing artist.
Wait a minute. So you're a Wham fan, so you're going for Boy George?
Yeah. Well, no, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. I'm sorry. George Michael, yes. I was thinking, I got him confused in my head.
All right.
But yeah, George Michael was amazing. I'm going with George Michael because of Wham, but Boy George was equally amazing.
Yes, okay.
Excuse me. Sorry.
All right, right answer.
I did know the difference.
That was the right answer.
Yes,
good job.
Good,
okay, all right. Category is famous gay athletes. Okay. Who was the first NBA player to come out? Jason Collins or John Amici?
Collins. No.
That's actually true. Okay, this is a trick question. Okay, because John Amici came out in 2007, but he was a former NBA player. Jason Collins was the first person to come out in 2013 while in the NBA.
Yeah, he was in the NBA.
Yeah,
I remember that.
So you got that was good.
Okay.
I was a little twist
I do remember that Sports Illustrated reading that story.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, final question. If elected governor, would you be willing to guest appear on an episode of The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City?
Why not? Let's try it.
All right. Okay.
I mean, what? I don't know what the role would be. The devil's always in the details.
That's right. All right. Andy Cohen, right here. He's willing to be on your show.
Yeah. Right. Have to find the right role, right?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. You're definitely putting us on the spot.
I know. I got to put you on the spot. Yeah. So, all right. Excellent. Well, cool. Well, all right. Thomas Wright, thank you so much for being part of the Equality Forum.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for sitting down and talking.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yeah. It's great to be here.
Take care. Thank you for watching the Equality Forum. I want to thank all of our candidates, as well as Cole Adams and his team at Fat Fish Media for designing and producing this beautiful event. There is nothing more important this year than staying healthy, staying active, and getting out to vote. The primary, again, is June 30th. Now, anyone can vote in the Democratic primary, but only registered Republicans can vote in the GOP primary. You can register at vote.utah.gov. Equality Utah is our state's LGBTQ advocacy organization, and the only way this work is possible is with your financial support. If you've enjoyed tonight's forum, please go to equalityutah.org and make a financial gift. Every dollar helps us advance LGBTQ equality in our state. Thank you, and have a great night.
Love is everlasting, ever living, ever loving, and ever giving.